They're just gonna pepper you with questions, Coach.
Cool. Fire away. We're ready.
Coach, just to start, building the roster, what was, some of the key points you were trying to, hit when you wanted to create, what kind of defense you wanted to look like here?
Well, you kind of got to marry it between, number one, what you're inheriting, and then what you envision as a defensive coordinator. I think all good coaches build their scheme and what they want to do schematically around the players that they have. So this spring, it'll be big for us to evaluate from a tactical standpoint what our guys can do. How many good pass rushers do we have? Who can blitz? Who can cover man-to-man? All those kind of things. That way you can build the pieces in the scheme around the players that you have to put them in the best position to execute. From a personality standpoint, we know who we want to be. Obviously, we have standards that are non-compromising with how we play. We want to play with lots of effort and violence and all those kinds of things. So from a personality standpoint and an identity standpoint, we have things that we're going to stand on that will demand our guys do. But when it comes to roster management and building the roster and things like that, obviously everybody's looking for a lot of the same traits. For us, we're a 4-2-5 defense, so the nickel is a critical piece. How much we build from a blitz menu and things like that will come down to a lot of what we can do in the core. What kind of defensive line bodies we have? Can we generate pass rush with 4 defensive linemen? Things like that. If you struggle doing that, then the more you have to invest in blitz patterns and breaking down protections and stuff that way. So for us, the biggest piece right now, spring ball kind of goes in 2 ways. If you have an experienced defense with guys that have been in the scheme, those guys kind of have an established toolbox of what our expectations are fundamentally, how you escape blocks, how you approach tackles, all those kind of things. So a lot of the time isn't spent teaching those things and creating those habits. From a spring ball standpoint, you're training and you're teaching. With the more experienced group, you spend a lot more time teaching than you do training, because those dudes already have a good foundational toolbox. For us, coming in now, we kind of have a mix of that. We kind of have guys that have played in the scheme before, guys that transferred from Marshall, and then guys that have not played in the scheme before. So we got to find that fine line of evaluating what do we need, what can our guys do, putting a heavy emphasis on training, because you guys that have guys in the program that do have an established toolbox in terms of what we believe in playing football fundamentally, and then also addressing the things that you're going to need situationally. So the long-winded answer is we brought in the best players that we felt could help us right now based on what we do. But right now we're really in the evaluation piece. That's going to be critical to see what these guys can do in the spring, and then address those needs in this next portal cycle or with our high school recruiting class.
Coach, in your system, do you prefer in your front 7 read, react, or upfield kind of mentality or system?
Sure. You kind of, like I said, you kind of got to build it around what your guys can do. We do a little bit of both. I believe the more volume you can have in your base defense, the better off you're going to be. I think college football is really challenging right now. You can't just say we're a mint front, read, react, and play coverage behind it. I feel like people can stress you in a lot of ways, so you want to be as multiple as you can with your scheme and do as many things as you can up front. So we're looking for guys that just have redeemable traits. There's going to be bigger guys that don't have as much lateral quickness and things like that, and we'll try to put them in a position where they're more read, react. There's going to be undersized guys that probably have a little better skill set with horizontal movements and getting vertical and things like that. And kind of within the scheme, our challenge as coaches within the play call and the defense, you can't coach every guy the same. Every guy has a job to do on every given snap, especially in the interior. A guy might be able to hold a G and do things like that, and another guy may not be able to. So we kind of give the flexibility of how our coaches coach. Number one, from a technique and tactical standpoint, how are you going to complete your assignment? You have to do that around the body type and what a guy can do. And then obviously, you kind of want to package your defense and know who's on the field as a play caller when you're calling those different things. So right now, like I said, I try to keep an open mind. I think you really got to do that nowadays in college football. I think the coordinators that say this is who I am and this is what I do, and they try to put the pieces in there, and if our guys can't do it, oh well, you know what I mean? That's tough nowadays. You know what I mean? The roster management piece is turnover every 6 months, so you better be pretty flexible with your scheme and what you ask your guys to do. So right now it's more about what redeemable traits does each guy have, how can we use them, and how can we give them a technique toolbox that allows them to do the things that we're going to ask them to do, if that makes sense.
Is there just a certain position group that excites you right now?
There is. I'm excited about all the guys. From a linebacker standpoint, I've coached a lot of good linebacker groups. Ours will be as talented as I've ever coached. Our defensive backfield we're bringing in some guys that have had some experience and have played at a high level at Marshall, and then a bunch of guys in the transfer portal that have tons of athletic ability. I'll tell you guys the same thing that I tell my players: talent means jack. It's an execution game, and at the end of the day, we have to grow a group of dudes that can execute consistently and play with cohesion. We're a long ways from that right now. Right now, we're in the evaluation standpoint. I want to get as deep into an install as I can with as much scheme as I can get in, just like anybody, but we have to be careful about that because of where we are in the program right now. The defensive end group is exciting. I feel like we got guys that can generate some pass rush with Tapp and Jabari and J.J. Hawkins. Those guys, obviously, some of them came from Marshall and stuff. We have some guys that are coming off injury as well, so we got to kind of be smart with how we rep them in the spring and make sure that they're 100% healthy, but also getting enough work where they're getting the install in and things of that nature. But from a collective group overall, talent won't be an issue here. We have talent. We got to get the guys to execute, and we have to build an identity for ourselves that's consistent on college football Saturdays, and that's the challenge for us all. So that work starts today, and I'm really excited about it from the D-line all the way back to the back end.
Coach Huff was talking about just, Mississippi's a unique place, so the staff kind of has to understand that. Obviously, the high school football here, the talent here. What's kind of your evaluation of football in Mississippi? How do you want to attack the recruiting kids, the Mississippi kids of the roster, things like that?
Sure. Football's important in the South. I've coached in the South before. I coached at Valdosta. I coached at Georgia Tech. It's kind of a South Georgia feel here. Football's really important. You don't have to get on the guys to do extra. They want to win. These guys grew up living and breathing football. That's kind of the difference when you're down here. You know what I mean? You feel that from the community. You feel that from the kids. Football's a big deal. So the level of investment from the community, the level of investment from the coaches, the level of investment from the players is just different when you're down here in the South. It makes our job a lot easier in terms of the expectations of what you want. You don't have to ask these guys to love the game and invest in it. It's kind of who they are. It's part of their DNA. It's part of everybody down here. Everybody down here gets behind your football program. There's really good coaches. There's lots of talent, as we all know. So that part is exciting. You can't manufacture a recruiting area. You can't manufacture a base of talent that you can bring in for your roster and all those kind of things. So we are at an advantage that way, just because of where we're geographically located. Now it's time to tap into the mentality that these kids in this community already has, and grow a football team with an identity that everybody in this area can be proud of and play to the expectations and the standards. It's important, so we have to operate that way and win.
Can you speak a little bit about how you use your nickel and what skill set that guy has to have?
Sure. For us, I just kind of think that you kind of got to make a decision when you're building a structure and a schematic identity for your defense. There has to be certain positions that are flexible in order to make it work. For us, it's the nickel. Our nickel has to be able to cover man-to-man. He has to be able to blitz off the edge. He has to play in the box when people formate you into the boundary. He just has to be able to do a lot of things. And because of that, you're looking for size, athleticism, and speed that's unique. So from a technique toolbox, he has a lot to learn. There's fundamental teaching that goes into covering man. There's fundamental teaching that goes into blitzing. There's fundamental teaching that goes into run fits. There's fundamental teaching that goes into playing a half field safety. You know what I mean? So he has to do a lot. It's a lot athletically. It's a lot mentally. But that piece kind of makes it work for us. For us, we say, hey, in college football, you're going to defend a ton of offense, so you have to be flexible. How are you going to be flexible? We're flexible with how we use our nickel. That's our philosophy. So we have to find that position. We're really excited about Ian Foster and Caswell, and Kobe Cage played Sam last year, so he's transitioning into that nickel piece. So we have to see what he can do from a coverage standpoint, because we know he can blitz and run and tackle. So that's a big piece of the defense for sure.
Coach, you mentioned the linebackers and how talented that group is. Coach Huff pointed to Chris Jones as a high priority player to retain from the old roster. So what have you seen from him so far?
He's an NFL body type, and he'll have a chance to play at that level. Physicality, speed, change of direction. He's just different when you watch him move around out on the field out there. Obviously, like I tell my guys in my room, the most talented and the best players don't play. They're not the ones that play. The ones that play are the ones that are dependable within the scheme, and they know what they're doing. Defense doesn't work if all 11 dudes aren't doing what they're supposed to all the time. So with that young man, he has all of the intangible pieces. So we talk about intangibles when you're recruiting, and intangibles when you're speaking about an athlete overall. From a mental standpoint, he's wired the right way. You don't have to tell him to go. He's going to hit things and be violent, and he's fast. His change of direction, and he's one of the strongest kids on the team. All that kind of stuff. A lot of his work will be done from a mental standpoint and a schematic standpoint, and that's the challenge in the linebacker room. Really talented. Will they be productive? I don't know. That's up to them and how they invest this spring and how far they come in terms of knowing what to do on a consistent basis. Just like on offense, there's a quarterback. For us, it's our linebackers. So they have a lot to learn in terms of getting the defense in and out of calls and setting fronts and doing all those kind of things and just becoming smart football players.
Coach, are you going to start Chris at Mike or Will, or you want to get a taste of both of it? So
They have to work both.
Okay.
If you just put it down on a depth chart right now, Chris will be a Will. Just because he moves a little bit better in space than some of the other guys, but they have to learn both. People will formate you, and they'll do all those kind of things to make certain guys play in the box. So we'll double train both of them for sure. And then you always have injuries. You know what I mean? It's not a. I always tell the guys, it's not a Mike Will depth chart. It's the best dudes on the field get in, right? So if you're the third best linebacker and you're a Mike and Will gets hurt, guess who's playing? The third best linebacker. So you definitely have to learn both. The defense is structured and taught to where they're always learning both at all times, and they'll both rep both at all times, just from an evaluation standpoint. And I really feel like that helps with the learning too. You know what I mean? It helps with cohesion when guys have to play both positions, because they know how to push things to each other, and they know how to fit off of each other, and all those kind of things. So.
As I look at the roster, looks like you've got solid depth everywhere to go into spring, except for one spot in the interior.
Mm-hmm.
You got to speak to that and maybe the process to get through spring, and then looking forward to maybe adding some bodies there.
Sure. I don't think that's exclusive to us. A lot of teams in college football are looking for interior defensive linemen. The big guys are always hard to find, but the big guys are also the ones that separate you. You know what I mean? So I feel good about the guys that we have. We obviously have to be smart about how we rep them. We have to get good quality work in without, getting somebody injured or things like that. And that's also another position that there's going to be some movement. We need to see who can play 3 technique, who can play a G, who can move laterally, right? So there's going to be some things where we'll move some guys around who can play field in, boundary in, all that kind of stuff. So we just have to be smart with the volume that we put on those guys, and really try to keep it simple from a schematic standpoint for those guys, because they're the ones from a technique standpoint, they're the ones that you really worry about in terms of getting a bunch of volume in and asking them to do too much before they learn the defense. So yeah, we're short bodies. I don't think that makes Southern Miss any different than anybody else in the country. Everybody's looking for big interior defensive tackles. But I do feel good about the guys that we have and the guys that are going to be in yellow jerseys because they got a knee bang or whatever it is injury-wise, right? But we'll also work some guys that play. We kind of have some body types that are end body types, but they're also big enough to play some interior 3 technique and stuff like that. JJ's one of those guys, JJ Hawkins. So some of those guys will get some work in the interior as well.
Anything else? Coach, thank you.
Thanks,
You're welcome.
Coach.
Thank you guys.
Thank you,
It's
Coach.
good to see you guys.